What if I told you that a single conversation could change someone's life forever? That's exactly what happened when Keanu Reeves met a struggling veteran outside a coffee shop. But it's not just about buying a house. It's about what happened after that will leave you speechless. In a world where celebrities often make headlines for all the wrong reasons, this story stands apart. As you watch, ask yourself, what would you do if you had the power to change someone's life? And how far would you go to make a difference? The aroma of fresh coffee wafted through the air as Keanu Reeves stepped out onto the busy street. The hustle and bustle of Los Angeles surrounded him, but something caught his eye. A man sat on the curb, a cardboard sign propped against his legs. Their eyes met, and Keanu felt a pull he couldn't explain. The man's gaze held a flicker of pride mixed with desperation. It spoke of battles fought and lost. Without thinking, Keanu found himself walking over, drawn by an inexplicable force. "Mind if I join you?" Keanu asked, his voice gentle. The veteran looked up, surprise etched across his face. Sure," he stammered. Keanu settled himself on the curb, careful not to invade the man's space. The smell of coffee mingled with the city's scents. "How about a cup of coffee?" he offered, gesturing to the shop behind them. The veteran's hands shook slightly as he accepted the steaming cup. "Thank you, sir. I'm Tom," he said, his voice rough from disuse. As they talked, the bustling city seemed to fade away. Tom's story unfolded, each word heavier than the last. He spoke of his time in the military, of friends lost and nightmares that wouldn't fade, but it was what came after that broke Keanu's heart. "I thought I'd done everything right," Tom said, his eyes fixed on the coffee cup. "Saved up, got a decent job. But then the medical bills started piling up. My wife, she got sick. Cancer. We fought it hard, but in the end," his voice trailed off, the pain still raw. Keanu felt a tightness in his chest as he listened, memories of his own struggles surfacing. He thought of the times he'd felt lost, alone in a world that seemed too big and too cruel. But he'd had support, opportunities. Tom had slipped through the cracks. Before I knew it, the house was gone, then the car. Now, well, Tom gestured to his meager belongings. "This is home." The weight of Tom's words hung in the air. Keanu found himself thinking of the comforts he often took for granted, a warm bed, a safe place to rest. He thought of the many veterans he'd met over the years, their sacrifices and struggles. "How long have you been out here?" Keanu asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Tom shrugged, a sad smile tugging at his lips. "Lost track. Months, maybe a year. Time sort of blends together out here." As they continued to talk, Keanu learned more about Tom's life. He spoke of his childhood in a small Midwest town, of joining the military to see the world and make a difference. There were moments of pride as he recounted his service, but they were overshadowed by the pain of what came after. "The hardest part," Tom said, his voice cracking, "is feeling invisible. People walk by, they don't even see you. It's like you stop existing." Keanu nodded, understanding all too well the loneliness Tom described. He thought of the times he'd sought solitude, craving anonymity. But to be truly unseen, to be erased from the world, that was a pain he could barely imagine. As their coffee cups emptied and the afternoon light began to fade, Keanu knew this moment would change everything. He couldn't walk away, couldn't return to his life and pretend he hadn't seen the pain in Tom's eyes. "Tom," Keanu said, his voice filled with quiet determination, "I can't pretend to understand everything you've been through, but I want you to know, you're not invisible. Not to me." Tom looked up, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. For a moment, neither man spoke. The sounds of the city rushed back in, but between them, a bond had been forged. As they parted ways, Keanu felt a resolve building within him. He couldn't change the past, couldn't erase the hardships Tom had endured, but maybe, just maybe, he could help write a different future. The city lights twinkled outside Keanu's hotel window, but his mind was far away, replaying Tom's story. The weight of the veteran's tale pressed down on him like a physical force. Keanu paced the room, wrestling with an overwhelming urge to act. He couldn't shake the image of Tom's weathered face, the lines etched by hardship, the eyes dulled by loss. But it was the flicker of hope he'd seen that truly shook him. Could that tiny spark be fanned into a flame? Fragments of Tom's story swirled in Keanu's mind. Tours of duty, the smell of gunpowder, the roar of explosions, comrades lost, their names on cold memorials, a family left behind, wondering if their soldier would return home whole. Keanu's own brushes with loss came flooding back. He understood how quickly everything could change, how the ground beneath your feet could crumble without warning. The actor's mind raced, piecing together Tom's fall from stability to homelessness. A cascade of misfortunes chipped away at his life, mounting medical bills from his wife's cancer treatments, the impossible choice between medicine and shelter, the car repossessed, leaving Tom without transportation to work. Finally, the foreclosure notice that shattered any remaining security. How could a country abandon those who served when they returned home broken? Keanu's fists clenched as he thought of the countless others like Tom, invisible to a society that owed them so much. As the night deepened, Keanu's restlessness grew. He gazed out at the city, knowing Tom was likely huddled in a doorway or beneath an overpass. The contrast between his comfort and Tom's reality struck Keanu like a physical blow. He turned to his phone, hesitating. Who could he call at this hour? A memory surfaced of a real estate developer specializing in affordable housing. Sarah Alvarez had spoken passionately about providing homes for those in need. Keanu retrieved her card and dialed, heart racing. It was late, but the image of Tom spurred him on. The phone rang 3 times before a sleepy voice answered. Hello? Miss Alvarez? This is Keanu Reeves. I apologize for calling so late, but I have an urgent situation. There was a pause. Then Sarah's voice came through, alert. Mr. Reeves? Of course. How can I help? Keanu took a deep breath and began to speak, telling Sarah about Tom's heartbreaking story of service, loss, and abandonment. I want to help him, Miss Alvarez, not just with temporary shelter, but with a real home, a place where he can rebuild his life, where he can feel safe and valued again. Is there any way we can make that happen? As the first rays of dawn crept across the Los Angeles skyline, Keanu Reeves slipped out of his hotel room, a man on a mission. His heart raced with anticipation and determination, fueled by the memory of Tom's weathered face and the weight of his story. With a quick motion, he pulled a worn baseball cap low over his eyes and donned a pair of nondescript glasses, melting into the crowd of early morning commuters. The streets were quiet as Keanu made his way to meet Sarah Alvarez, the real estate developer he had called in the dead of night. She stood waiting, her eyes widening with recognition. I've never had a client quite like you, Mr. Reeves, she said softly. Please, call me Keanu, he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. And let's keep this between us. No one can know what we're doing today. Sarah nodded, her expression growing serious. Of course, I've lined up several properties that might suit your unique requirements. Shall we begin? As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Keanu and Sarah crisscrossed the city, their quest for the perfect home growing more urgent with each passing hour. They visited modest bungalows and apartments, each one a potential fresh start for Tom. But something was always off. A steep set of stairs that Tom's war-weary legs might struggle with, or a neighborhood too far from veteran support services. As afternoon bled into evening, fatigue began to set in. Keanu's shoulders slumped slightly, the weight of his secret mission bearing down on him. Sarah noticed his demeanor and placed a gentle hand on his arm. We have one more place to see, she said softly. They pulled up to a small, unassuming house on a quiet street. The fading sunlight cast a warm glow on its pale yellow exterior, and a large oak tree stood sentinel in the front yard. As Keanu stepped out of the car, a strange feeling washed over him, a sense of rightness that he couldn't quite explain. The moment he crossed the threshold, Keanu knew. This was it. The living room was bathed in soft light, creating a sense of openness and warmth. A small fireplace stood ready to chase away the chill on cold nights. The kitchen, though modest, felt inviting, a place where simple meals could become moments of comfort and healing. As Keanu moved through the house, he could almost see Tom finding his footing again within these walls. The spare bedroom could easily be converted into a home office, offering a space for Tom to rebuild his life. The backyard, while not large, had a small patio perfect for quiet moments of reflection. What struck Keanu most was the feeling of possibility that permeated every corner of the house. It wasn't just a shelter, it was a canvas on which Tom could paint a new chapter of his life. With a small nod to Sarah, Keanu set in motion a chain of events that would change lives forever. This is the one, he said, his voice thick with emotion. How quickly can we make this happen? Sarah's eyes widened slightly. With the resources you've made available, we could potentially close in a matter of days. But Keanu, are you sure about this? Keanu's eyes shone with determination and unshed tears. I've never been more sure of anything in my life, Sarah. Tom gave years of his life in service to others. He lost so much. This is the least I can do to honor that sacrifice. As the last light of day faded, Keanu and Sarah sat at the kitchen table, poring over paperwork. They worked tirelessly, signing documents and making calls. Keanu insisted on additional provisions, a fund to cover property taxes and utilities, arrangements for basic furnishings, and connections to local veteran support services. Hours ticked by, but neither Keanu nor Sarah seemed to notice the passage of time. They were caught up in the thrill of their secret mission, the knowledge that their actions would profoundly change a man's life. As the sun dipped below the Los Angeles skyline, Keanu Reeves found himself alone in his hotel room, his heart racing with a mix of excitement and trepidation. He had set something extraordinary in motion, but now worried about keeping this act of kindness from becoming a media circus that could hurt the very person he was trying to help. The following days were a whirlwind of hushed phone calls and clandestine meetings. Keanu's small team of trusted advisors worked tirelessly, sworn to secrecy. Each signature brought conflicting surges of joy and anxiety. The weight of his secret pressed down, making even simple interactions feel strained. When a barista asked for his name at his favorite coffee shop, he hesitated before mumbling, "John." The young woman's eyes widened in recognition, and Keanu hurried out, his coffee forgotten on the counter. One afternoon, reviewing final documents in Sarah's office, a new worry emerged. How would he reveal this gift to Tom without overwhelming him or making him feel like a charity case? Keanu tossed and turned that night, scenarios playing out in his mind like scenes from an unfinished script. Should he arrange a chance encounter? Too contrived. Leave an envelope at the shelter? Too impersonal. As dawn crept through his window, Keanu realized the solution had to be as genuine as their initial meeting. With keys in hand, Keanu knew the hardest part was yet to come. He spent hours rehearsing what to say, only to discard each speech as insincere. He decided to trust his instincts and speak from the heart. The day of the reveal, Keanu navigated the city without drawing attention, searching for Tom. He started at their coffee shop, then the shelter and soup kitchen. Hours passed with no sign of the veteran. Doubt crept in. What if Tom had left? What if he didn't want to be found? Keanu's stomach churned with anxiety. Just as he was about to give up, Keanu spotted a familiar figure in a doorway. Tom's weathered face was etched with exhaustion, but there was dignity in his posture. Keanu approached, keys burning a hole in his pocket. "Tom?" he called softly. Tom looked up, confused before recognition dawned. "Mr. Reeves? I didn't expect to see you again." Keanu crouched beside him. "I've been looking for you. I have something for you, but it's not a handout. It's a fresh start if you want it." Tom's brow furrowed as Keanu produced the keys. "I don't understand," Tom said, eyes fixed on the metal. Keanu took a deep breath. "It's a home, Tom. A place of your own. No strings attached, no repayments needed. Just a chance to rebuild your life on your own terms." Tom's hands shook as he reached for the keys. "Why?" he whispered. "Why would you do this for me?" Keanu's eyes grew damp as he answered, "Because everyone deserves a second chance. And because your story, your service, your struggles, they matter. You matter, Tom." Tom's composure crumbled. He wept openly, decades of hardship pouring out. Keanu placed a comforting hand on his shoulder, oblivious to the gathering crowd. In that moment, all the challenges Keanu had faced faded away. The look of pure gratitude on Tom's face made it all worthwhile. As the morning sun painted the Los Angeles skyline in hues of gold and pink, Keanu Reeves stood outside the bustling coffee shop where he had first encountered Tom. His heart raced, a mixture of anticipation and nervousness coursing through his veins. The small envelope in his hand felt heavy with possibility. Keanu's eyes scanned the sidewalk, searching for the familiar figure. There, huddled against a nearby building, sat Tom. The veteran's weathered face bore the marks of another night on the unforgiving streets, yet a quiet dignity remained in his posture. Taking a deep breath, Keanu approached. The city sounds faded, leaving only the echo of his footsteps and his pounding heart. As he drew near, Tom looked up, surprise flickering across his features. "Keanu?" Tom's voice was rough with disuse, tinged with confusion. Keanu lowered himself to sit beside Tom, the cold concrete a stark reminder of Tom's daily reality. For a moment, he struggled to find the right words. "Tom," he began softly, "I've been thinking about your story. You're not invisible. Your struggles, your sacrifices, they matter." Tom's brow furrowed, emotions playing across his face. Keanu's hand trembled slightly as he held out the envelope. "This is for you," he said simply. With hesitant movements, Tom accepted the offering. His calloused fingers fumbled with the seal. As he pulled out the contents, his eyes widened. A key gleamed in the morning light, accompanied by a slip of paper bearing an address. "I don't understand," Tom whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Keanu leaned in, his words gentle. "It's a home, Tom, a place of your own, no strings attached, just a fresh start." The world seemed to hold its breath as the magnitude of the gesture sank in. Tom's hands began to shake, tears spilling onto his cheeks. Years of hardship poured out in a flood of raw emotion. "Why?" Tom choked out, searching Keanu's face. Keanu's own eyes glistened as he replied, "Because everyone deserves a second chance. Your story matters and it's not over yet." In that moment, the barriers between them crumbled away. Tom's body shook with sobs, years of pent-up pain finding release. Keanu reached out, enveloping Tom in a warm embrace. The bustling sidewalk faded away, curious glances forgotten. In that embrace, a silent understanding passed between them, of shared humanity, of compassion's power to heal. As they parted, Tom clutched the key to his chest like a lifeline. His eyes, though red-rimmed, shone with a long-absent light. "I don't know how to thank you," he whispered. Keanu smiled gently. "Live well, Tom. That's all the thanks I need." Rising to his feet, Keanu extended a hand to Tom. "What do you say we go see your new home?" With a nod, Tom grasped Keanu's hand, allowing himself to be pulled up. As they began to walk, their steps fell into sync, two lives forever altered by a single act of kindness. As Keanu and Tom walked away, neither could have imagined the tidal wave of change about to sweep through their community. What happened next would challenge everything they thought they knew about the power of a single good deed. The story of Keanu's extraordinary act of kindness spread like wildfire through the neighborhood. At first, it was just whispers and curious glances as Tom moved into his new home. But soon, those whispers turned into a chorus of support. Keanu stood across the street, watching as Tom settled into his new life. His heart swelled with a mixture of joy and disbelief. He had hoped to change one man's life, but as he observed the neighborhood's response, he realized he had set something much bigger in motion. Like a pebble tossed into a still pond, his simple act of kindness was creating ripples that reached far beyond Tom's front door. Mrs. Johnson, the retired schoolteacher next door, was the first to knock. Her arms were laden with a homemade lasagna and a well-worn quilt. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she said, her eyes twinkling with warmth. Tom, still overwhelmed by his change in fortune, could only nod in gratitude. The Martinez family brought over a sturdy kitchen table they no longer needed, transforming Tom's empty living room into a home. Mr. Lee from down the street offered to help Tom set up his utilities, spending an entire afternoon making sure everything was in working order. As word spread beyond the immediate neighborhood, the community's generosity seemed to know no bounds. Local businesses stepped up, offering job opportunities, donating supplies, and ensuring Tom had everything he needed to start his new life. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Keanu sat in his car across the street from Tom's new home. He watched as Tom chatted with his neighbors on the front porch, looking more at ease than Keanu had ever seen him. The sight stirred something deep within Keanu's soul. As he drove back to his hotel that night, Keanu's mind raced with possibilities. The impact of his gesture had far exceeded his expectations, and he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. He found himself unable to sleep, pacing the length of his room as an idea began to take shape. At 2:37 a.m., Keanu sat down at the small desk in his hotel room, his fingers hovering over the keyboard of his laptop. He took a deep breath, steadying himself for what he was about to do. With trembling fingers, he began to draft an email to his financial advisors. The plan that poured out of him was audacious, perhaps even reckless. But as the words appeared on the screen, Keanu felt a sense of rightness settle over him. He was proposing to establish a foundation, one dedicated to providing housing and support for veterans in need across the country. It would require a significant portion of his personal wealth, far more than most would consider prudent. But as Keanu thought of Tom and the transformation he had witnessed, he knew it was worth every penny. He envisioned communities coming together, lives being rebuilt, and hope being restored on a scale he had never before contemplated. As the first light of dawn began to creep through the curtains, Keanu finished outlining his vision. He read through the email one last time, his heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. This decision would alter the course of his life irrevocably, but he had never felt more certain of anything. With a deep breath, Keanu moved the cursor over the send button. He paused for a moment, considering the magnitude of what he was about to set in motion. Then, with a quiet resolve, he clicked. As the sun dipped below the Los Angeles skyline, painting the sky in warm hues, Keanu Reeves stood at the park's edge. Laughter and guitar strums filled the air, a stark contrast to where he first met Tom. Keanu's mind wandered to the ripple effect his kindness had created, restoring hope and belonging. The community's overwhelming response proved compassion's contagious nature. As twilight settled, Keanu felt a renewed sense of purpose. His journey with Tom was only the beginning. With each step towards his car, a new mission weighed on his shoulders. The foundation he envisioned would rebuild lives, one veteran at a time. Keanu realized that small acts of kindness could spark monumental change. This was more than charity. It was a movement to heal wounds unseen.